on the creative side, though, there's no boundaries, I think. You know, if a good idea is a good idea. How you're thought of in the business is so much of, I say it's, you know, people always say, Willy, it's who you know. Well, it's who you know and what they think of you. So I might know you, but if I don't think well of you, you know, then I'm going to have a, you know, we're going to have a slightly different reaction.
Right. You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where we talk to successful women in the entertainment industry and hear their stories. In this episode, I got to speak with Jennie Tugend. She is a creative producer who brought us both the Lethal Weapon and the Free Willy franchises, just to name two. She also teaches creative producing at UCLA Extension, Columbia College Hollywood, and AFI. So if you are not currently enrolled in one of her classes, this is your lucky day. This is a master class. You can find us at theother50%.com, and you can also go there to buy the Other 50% merchandise. You can find us on iTunes, Facebook, on Twitter at Other50%, and on Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And I now have a sister podcast called The Other 50%, a herstory of tech. You can also find it on iTunes or on the same website, but you do have to subscribe separately on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider. That's where I talk to successful women in tech and hear their stories. Okay, here's Jennie. What do you do?
I am a film producer. I'm a film producer mostly in the feature world. You know, I've done some television, but mostly in the feature world. And the problem with being a producer is that no one knows what a producer does.
Exactly.
And so I started teaching a class in producing. I started teaching about 3 years ago. And and the first class is, what is a producer? And no one really knows. They think, oh, you're the person with the money, which is
That is
not
what everybody thinks who's outside of the business. Oh, you put up the money.
Yeah, which isn't really true. And what I try to tell everyone from the beginning is that you're the person who goes and gets the money.
Right.
Right? And you can't go and get the money unless you have something really extraordinary to bring them.
Right.
And so it starts with a story. So I go through this whole phase of, it's actually interesting. I created a class to help people understand it's like a 12 weeks program which begins with, what is a producer?
Oh, that's great.
And and to a certain degree, film and TV producers begin the same way, with a story, a concept, an idea, or script. And when we get into production, it sort of takes a different turn. But it's fascinating because, you know, we look at credits, and if you say, why does it take 14 producers to make a movie, and who are all these executive producers, and what is a line producer, and what's an associate producer code? And so it's very confusing in the film world, whereas in the TV world, a producing credit essentially means that you created and you created the show, and you're most likely a writer.
Right. It's very different.
You know, very different. And so in television, producers who are writers, they rule. That's what it's all about.
They are the boss of that set.
And in the film business, the producer often starts the process, and then at a certain point, the director on the set is, you know, the king, right? And so the power shifts.
Right.
But I try to explain what all the different roles are, you know, because a lot of these students are a lot are international, and so they come from a background where it's done differently in their country, and they're here to learn how we do it, and whether or not they want to stay here and try it or take their knowledge back home, you know, and apply it in some way. So it's interesting. So to try to understand what a producer does here is takes me about 12 weeks
Yeah,
to
it's a
explain.
big job.
But I think the most interesting, succinct way I've heard is there's a producer, Larry Terman, who said that a producer causes the film to happen. And I thought, well, that pretty sums it up, you know.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because if in fact the producer starts the ball rolling, you can start that with an idea, a story, a magazine article, you know, something good you heard at Thanksgiving dinner. It can be from a childhood fairy tale, a novel you read. It can come from so many different places, so we try to identify what a story is.
And then there are a million different pieces to that.
Oh, yeah, because then you have a good story, and then what? What are you going to do with it? And then we explore the ways you have to understand a good story, find a good story, understand why this would, make a good film, and then you have to control it.
Right.
Because I also try to underscore the idea that a producer is only as important as the material you control. Mm-hmm. Because, we can be a dime a dozen, but if you have something that you control that is good, then that's your power.
Exactly.
So the question is, how do I control it? So then we go through a whole, class about the rights. If it's a book, for example, who owns the rights? The publisher, the author, the estate, who owns the rights, and why are they going to give you permission to, control the material and try to exploit it into whatever medium you have in mind? So we go into that.
Is that the whole option process? The
option, or there's a shopping agreement, an option, there is a memo of understanding. If you don't know me, why are you going to let me run with your material, right?
Well, I would look at your credits and say, okay.
Right? But if you have a track record, it's a little easier.
Yeah.
But to make it, I have a guest speaker who, I try to invite guest speakers, I'm back to my class for a moment, who every week who is a working professional, and that profession is relevant to the course the class I'm teaching that day. So when I get to the legal class, my lawyer comes and says, shopping agreements don't matter. It's just an agreement, because no money doesn't exchange hands. Mm-hmm. So if one of us breaks the agreement, what are the damages?
What's your recourse? Yeah.
And so the best way is to, even if it's $1, to make it official and draft a proper option. So it's interesting. So they learn that.
Yeah.
And then, so then when we get past the fact that, I've got a cool story, I now tie it up. Now what?
Get it written?
Get it written, right? And then we begin the creative process of, selecting a writer, and how do you engage a writer if you are a small independent producer with limited funds. Mm-hmm. How am I going to find a writer to work for free?
Yeah.
Right? And then what's a collaboration? And so if you and I are sitting here trying to hammer out a movie from a story that I just optioned, am I a writer too? Are we collaborating? I'm not, if I don't put pencil to paper, what is my role in this? What I try to make clear is to manage expectations from the get-go. Mm-hmm. You're the writer, I'm the producer. Right?
So interesting. So it's not a line producing class.
Not at all.
It's a creative producing class.
Right. But once we get past because I do it in a very progressive manner. Mm-hmm. So about midway, we're all pretending, right?
Yeah.
So midway, we have the script, we've got the legal papers, we have a writer, whatever. And then let's make the movie.
Mm-hmm. So now you have the money.
I'm pretending that we have financing.
Yes.
Well, one class is go get the financing.
Yeah, how do you get that?
So then, it's really what's a studio, what's a mini, you can get money from anywhere, including your rich uncle, mm-hmm. And how much do you need? Budget, breakdown, right? And this is where the nuts and bolts starts to come in.
Right.
But that's about midway through, because I want to explain that's not where it starts.
Right.
And then a line producer is a great profession, mostly because if you're good, your phone rings and you go to work.
You work all the time.
And you work all the time, and you work your butt off. And when it's done, and you move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. For better or worse, the kind of producer I am, that's only part 2.
Right.
Right? So then when the film is finally in the can, then we start post and marketing and distribution and all that stuff. So I don't really leave a movie until it opens in the theater.
So this is years.
Years. And the first part that I just explained is the most amount of time.
Right.
People don't understand that unless you've done it for a while, you can option property and say, I just need 12 months to get, no problem. I'll put this together in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And I said, make sure you have renewals in there. No. People don't understand how long the process takes.
Yeah. Well, you hear people giving their Oscar speech. This was 10 years in the making, 20 years in the making.
And I also try to, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I try to highlight the importance of a producer in that when the Oscars are handed out and the last one is the most prestigious one, which is Best Picture. Who goes up to, who gets that trophy, and that's the producer.
Right.
You know, so, and they say, well, why? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Hang out with me for 12 weeks, and I'm going to show you why, you know.
So where all are you teaching?
I have a class at UCLA Extension, and then I'm on the faculty at Columbia College Hollywood, and now I'm most recently a producing mentor at AFI.
So you are really shaping the next generation.
Well, I hope so, but it keeps me current.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I can't be this old person standing there talking about the 90s. Who cares?
These guys were born.
I know, that's shocking, too. Sometimes I make movie references, and it just, the expression
right
is blank. And it's like, what?
Oh, that's hard.
And I said, but you have to know this, because in a room, someone might, say, well, remember this at breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know.
It matters.
It does matter, you know. So there are, I suppose there's lots of courses in film history, you know, just so that you can be a little smarter in the room.
Exactly.
If an executive says, my favorite horror movie is The Omen, or I'm looking for a thriller like, 3 Days of the Condor, you should know what the hell they're talking about.
Exactly. Now take us back to when you began. How did you know you wanted to get into this business?
I didn't, actually. A lot of people who are in the business stumble into it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and I'm one of them. I realized I got into the business later. I was 30. A lot of people start, earlier in their 20s, but I did, you name it, I did it in my 20s. And then finally I thought, well, I should grow up and get a real job. And that was when primarily it was an assistant at ICM, which was great. I recommend that to people as an entry-level position because you get to know the town.
So you were an assistant to an agent.
And as a literary agent, motion picture literary agent, I worked at ICM in New York and also in Los Angeles. But it gave me the biggest education in telephones, who the players are, what happens when an agent calls, what that conversation sounds like. And it just gave me the lay of the land.
Did that also teach you the whole option process and development process?
No. This was an agent. I was at a busy desk doing the stuff, getting the coffee, answering the phones, sending scripts out. This is a long time ago. So there was no computers. We did everything with our little electric typewriters, and there was no internet. So letters were hand typed. Letters were hand-delivered, scripts were hand-delivered, and files were in file cabinets.
Oh, my gosh. So we were representing actors?
Writers. And so, but I knew I didn't want to grow up to be an agent, so I took a detour and I went a different direction. I answered an ad. Well, actually, this is a little colorful tidbit, because when I left ICM, I went to run a saloon. I became a saloon, an old, funky dive bar in Beverly Hills. It was the greatest place. It was on near the corner of Wilshire and La Cienega. And the bar had been there, I'm sure, since Prohibition. It had every bullet hole, it was a funny bar. It was called Sorrel's. And it was a neighborhood dive.
Oh, my God.
It was great. It was great because one of my old movie references was Kitty of Gunsmoke. Anyway, so I got to be Kitty of Gunsmoke. I ran that saloon. I got to choose the music in the 45s, and the 45 record. I did that for 18 months, and it was fantastic. And then the bar closed. So I did that, and I met some of my lifelong friends came through that bar. We are friends today, including my husband. And then I'm going to fast forward to me answering an ad in Variety with a little ad that said, Hollywood producer looking for assistant, Malibu. I said, okay.
That sounds good.
Right. So I went to Malibu, got the job, and that began the real entry into the business because I worked for a producer named Jerome Hellman for 4 years. And Jerry was, he had an Oscar for having produced Midnight Cowboy.
Oh. And
he had a really nice office behind his home right on the beach in Malibu. And it was just me and Jerry. So for those 4 years, I learned everything about development, story, working with writers, contracts, because he was very highly regarded in those days. And so if he had an idea, a project, he could attract the biggest writers in the business. And the way he would develop would be, he had an idea or he had an option to book, and a writer, big writers, James Dickey, who wrote Deliverance, Stuart Stern, Waldo Salt. These were some of the big writers of the time. They would come and sit in a room like you and I are sitting here and discuss story and characters. And my job was, and there was a little tape recorder, and my job was to later take the tape and transcribe it. So I was not like a court reporter, but I reported word for word, verbatim, that conversation, and which eventually became books, 3-ring notebooks, a multitude of notebooks just in transcribing.
You cannot pay for that kind of education.
Can't pay for it because I was in the room, sort of.
Yeah. Were you in the room when it happened, or you were just listening to the tape afterwards?
I listened to the tape afterwards, but it put me in the room.
Oh, yeah.
And so I listened how two men would sit and discuss the story of a woman who was approaching 40 and realizing her biological clock was ticking and what she was going to do about it. There was not a man in her life, and what was this woman going to do? And it was fascinating to hear these two men.
Yeah, their perspective.
Analyzing this woman's character to put into a movie.
How'd they do?
They did pretty good, actually. We got it. We had it set up at Warner Brothers for a while, but the process was great because the discussion was, well, what do you think? They went in depth about women they knew, about their perception of what that experience must be like.
Yeah.
But of course, they couldn't have it for real, that experience, So it was.
Did they call you in to say, hey?
No. My job was to transcribe. And then but to hear the process of how a story goes from zero, you come in with a clean slate and you start developing out of character, out of story.
So it's more than just someone sitting down and writing a script.
Oh, this is the way Jerry did it was very long in development. You would sit down. He'd say, "I have an idea. I want to tell a story about two brothers from different sides of the country who come together to mine for gold in Alaska." Okay, now tell that story. What does that look like? Well, who are these brothers? Why are they separated? Who are their parents? What is it about gold mining that attracts them? I mean, the little, most minute character things. And so that gave me a giant education in that.
Yeah. So what films did you do with him?
Well, interestingly enough, we developed a number of projects, but didn't get any of them made. So 4 years after of learning the legal aspect of it, the optioning aspect, the development aspect, it was time for me to move on.
Yeah.
And as chance would have it, a friend of mine called and said, Richard Donner just came back from Europe and is looking for an assistant, and he's setting up a shop at Warner Brothers. So I said, okay.
Okay.
So I went up to Dick's house, I met him, got the job, and started, now it's 1984, and started working. So, it's my first studio job.
Yeah.
Which was good. I've been this development brat in Malibu, and so now I got to, dress up and go to a studio.
Now you're on the lot. Now you're in it.
So that was great. Donner's still a good friend of mine, but when we started, it was just me and Dick. And he had just come back with a film called Lady Hawk. We were in post-production on that, looking for the next film, when Spielberg said, here, and handed him a script called The Goonies. We said, okay. So, and Dick had this idea of how all these kids would work, and they were heads, and this big treasure hunt, and so on and so forth. So he expanded on the story, and next thing we know, later that year, we're off in Oregon making this little movie called The Goonies.
That's great. Now, when you're shooting, what does your job become then?
Well, at that time, I was assistant to the producer-director. I was Dick's assistant. And to my good fortune, I had the development skills in my pocket, and Dick relied on me for that. So I got to read all the scripts, right? And I could recommend them, and I would act them out or whatever I needed to do to get his attention, right? Must read this. And that put me in a good place with him, because that he began to trust my taste, and I began to understand what he was looking for. So we made the Goonies, and the shocking part is that it's kind of like this family kid classic movie.
Yeah.
Who knew? So you can walk in with this great resume, and they see the Goonies, and that's the one that everyone likes a lot. It's funny. But after the Goonies, so then we came back to Warner Brothers. We're in post production, and we're starting the company. So we had offices, a staff. So what began as, Dick and myself eventually grew to, we had our own building. We had about 15 people working for us. We had our own editing rooms. It became a company.
So it sounds like now you're an executive.
Yes. Yeah. And looking for the next project. So I'm thinking, well, the guy who did Superman and The Omen and The Goonies has very eclectic taste. But I was looking for the next family film. And then Dick came in one day and he said, "Here, kid, tell me what you think of this." And I looked at it, and it was called Lethal Weapon. I said, "I don't know. That doesn't sound like a family movie to me."
That sounds terrible.
And, of course, that was, that became the next movie.
Not just movie, franchise.
Franchise, right. But that was my first associate producing credit.
Great.
So I got in.
Yeah.
When I got in, and it's just, this weird trajectory of having the skills. I had the assistant skills from ICM. I had the development skills from Jerry, and I brought that to the party for Dick, and we just built on that. So then once I started getting the experience on making a movie, the physical part of that, I loved it.
You were in.
I was in. So now I kept building on that, so that, and Dick was great, because not only was he a mentor to me at that level, he kept giving me more and more responsibility. So being opportunistic, I said, "Yeah, you grab it."
Yeah.
And so he did, and so eventually I came up to co-producing, and then later on to producer. So I started producing my own movies. But the funny part is the Free Willy franchise came about because it was written by, the story and the first script was written by a man named Keith Walker. And Keith was an actor on The Goonies.
Oh, you're kidding.
He played Sean Astin's father. Sean Astin and Josh Brolin were brothers, and the father was Keith Walker. And so on the set in Oregon, Keith said, "Jennie, I have a script. Would you read it?" And I thought, "Oh,
great.
God, an actor with a
script.
Exactly, an actor with a script. Okay, sure." So I took it home and read it, and I have to say, it was much different than what it ended up becoming as a movie. But nevertheless, you cry at the end. This little boy said, "Go, Willy," and the whale jumps to freedom, and you go, "Yay!" That's great.
It.
And so that began a 7 years to get that movie made.
Before it was made?
Yeah.
What was going on during all that time?
Well, let me think. I got the script in 84 or in 85, something like that. And the first movie was made in 93.
Did it go through a bunch of different versions? Was it hard
Lots
to
of
get someone
versions.
to finance it?
Lots of versions. Disney wanted to do it because they were the only studio in town making family films in those days. And so Katzenberg, wanted to make the movie for very little money.
Yeah.
And we said, we can't make a movie with a killer whale for very little money.
Yeah, that's going to cost some money.
Yeah, we need more. So anyway, so it's a long story, but we got it made by when Arnon Milchan at New Regency stepped in and said, "I want 50% of this movie." And then Terry Semel, who was running the studio at that time, said, "Okay, let's go." So we put $10 million from Warner's and $10 million from New Regency. Now we had our $20 million, and we went off to make this movie.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, were there a lot of women doing what you were doing at the time?
No. No.
Did it occur to you that you were kind of a pioneer in this space, or were you just doing it?
No, I always just did the work. It was always about the work. And it wasn't even that I was a Chinese American woman. That even kind of made me even, a little more apart. But, no, not really. Dick Donner is married to Lauren Schuler Donner, who's a very successful producer. And, I watched her work, and there was never any thought about, well, I'm a woman, so I'm going to have to do this differently or work, as a woman producer, it didn't really affect us in that way. We worked.
And it sounded like you had male mentors who threw you in.
Yeah. And so I was always treated, even, it's weird to say, like you're one of the boys, but it wasn't really boy and girl. It was just like, you're on the team, let's go. Yeah. So even when we, early on, when we were doing the Lethal Weapon movies, that's a very boy-heavy flick,
Yeah.
And so I was, more often than not, the only woman on the bus, going location scouting or in the cutting room or on the set, whatever. We had the casting director was Marion Doherty, so we had a woman, terrific Mary Mallon as our costume designer. So there were women on the crew, but on a producing level, it was really great.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm thinking, because it does feel like we've slipped backwards a little bit lately, and I'm just trying to get my head around, like, what is it? Have we really gone backwards? Have we all become much more sensitive?
What do you mean by backwards? Backwards in what?
It just seems like I'm talking to a lot of women now who've really gone through so much sexual harassment or so much obstacles or had a hard time and have said, there's a club and I can't get in.
There is a club.
Yeah.
There is a club.
You got in.
Well, I got in, but I wasn't, I didn't play poker with the guys at night, It was, and it was a little different because there are different clubs. There are clubs where your children go to the same school.
Yeah.
There are clubs where you have similar outside interests, I wasn't in any of the outside clubs. My relationships are always work-based, right? And there was probably, there was no Producers Guild. There was women in film early on.
Yeah.
But there was, the difference was the pay.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. Difference was the pay. If I had, I believe, especially at a big studio like Warner Brothers, I think after you do a hit film, you are often rewarded, right? And so my pat on the back after Free Willy was that I then left the Donner company, and they gave me my own production company. So I was JLT Prods Productions, whatever, at Warner Brothers, which is great because then I had my office, my staff.
You had your own deal.
And I had my own deal.
Were you paid as much then as the fellas you had worked for?
Well, once you have your own deal, you still are on your own. You're only as good as your next movie.
Right. The pressure.
Right? Right? And so they pay your overhead, so I don't have, out-of-pocket expenses. But there's no paycheck. Your paycheck comes from when you get a movie greenlit.
Oh, but they're paying for your office and your
staff as well? Yeah. So they pay for the overhead, which is great because it gives you a fancy address.
Yeah.
And it means you're in business. Exactly. You have distribution. You're in business, at a studio level.
You're paid on the film once you're in a go.
Yeah. But I think that guys are rewarded differently.
How so?
From what I've observed is that studios will often give you a movie.
Oh, like something they've developed?
Right. Like, hey, you're on the lot. I want you to produce for me. So here, take a look at this. Take a look at that. And I can see people, of course you take advantage of that. Hey, it's a go movie. I'm going to do this. And you just get your next movie faster.
And that didn't happen for you?
No. I started working on Free Willy 2 right away.
Oh, that helped?
Yeah, because Free Willy 1 was very successful, and it was right after the first preview screening, and kids were applauding, parents were crying, people were coming up to us and giving us money to help save the whales, save the whales.
Yeah.
And so the studio, the brass was there, and they said, aha, we have something here, let's start the sequel.
Yes.
So that was a good day.
Oh, great. So you did 2 and 3 under your company?
Yeah. Well, no, it was the Donner company. It was the Donner company, because that's where it started. But I was the producer of all 3.
Oh, so you were doing those and had your own company at the same time?
Yep.
Okay, what did you do under your company?
I made a movie called Star Kid, which I thought was going to be a walk in the park. It was a nice little script. about a kid who, finds a alien robot that lands in his backyard, and the robot turns out to be a prototype cyber suit who landed here by accident, and so it's a shy boy who picks up a alien robot who can only function if the boy gets inside of him. So he's now so the shy little boy is now empowered by getting inside the robot, and they talk and they become friends. It's a wonderful story that Manny Cotto wrote. Manny is very successful. Right now he's a very successful TV showrunner. But at that time he wanted to tell this story about the shy kid and the robot, and do creatures and monsters in the old-fashioned way, in rubber suits, not CGI. So we had a great time doing it, but I thought, this is going to be a walk in the park. Great, I'll just do this little movie.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be anything but, because it's complicated. You have children, you have effects, you have aliens and robots in suits that work or don't work. You have children, and it was almost 9 weeks of night shooting.
With children? So a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, yeah. So when the curfew was up for the kids, we would turn our cameras to the monsters.
Ah.
Right.
How much can kids work at night?
I think there's, I don't know the exact, most our call time was about 6 p.m.
So is it the same roles time-wise?
Yeah, so we did have to wrap at, midnight.
Yeah.
And come back the next day. And then we would shoot from 12 for the rest of until the sun came out with the grown-up monster part. And it was tough because we all turned into vampires, and we couldn't come home because when you're home, you have sunlight, you have the phone, you have distractions, you have the gardener, you've got people talking to you.
Yeah.
So I took a room at the Holiday Inn.
Oh, so you could sleep.
So I could sleep.
So you weren't trying to also run your company during the day.
No.
You were shooting.
And unfortunately, the meetings that I did have while I was doing that were I was a zombie. I would sit there and try to talk story when I hadn't slept because I was just about to start my day's work. I was crazy.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
Nuts.
And the movie, the movie did not perform as we had hoped it would, but that's a long story. Nevertheless, the experience was really challenging. So I was caught off guard. I thought this is going to be easy. Oh, yeah. Easy, $10 million movie, kid and some robots, Wrong.
I bet you learned a lot.
I did learn a lot. I learned, and it was non-union.
In L.A.?
In L.A. for $10 million. So we were in their backyard, and the unions were all over us.
Yeah, I was going to say, how'd you get away with that?
Not easily. Not easily. It was really a difficult shoot because we were picketed every single night.
How did you not get organized?
The company that I made the movie for refused. They said, no, we hang tough. We do not organize. And so we went to work under duress every single night.
Wow. And
the parents were freaked out about their kids. What's going on? What are all these guys doing? What's going on? Is it safe? So on and so forth. And it got very tense. And my director, thank God, had to stay focused because he didn't know the next day who his camera crew was going to be. Because under pressure, a lot of the members of the crew split. They said, life's too short. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to be on that blacklist. So we had to keep changing crews and flying people in who would work non-union from wherever they came from.
Like it wasn't hard enough with the creatures and the nighttime and the kids.
Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, that was the tough part. And my line producer was a champion because he would be on the set with us all night, and then he would spend all day with lawyers, trying to keep us afloat. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow. Well, it doesn't kill you.
Right.
It makes you stronger.
Right, but no, that turned out to be super challenging.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after that, what'd you do?
After Star Kid, what did I do? I went to... See, we did all the Willy movies. Tales from the Crypt was part of the Donner thing. That was great. We did this, anthology on HBO. That was a machine because we had to turn out, an episode a week.
Now you're in TV.
And now I'm in TV.
I mean, it's not TV, it's HBO. Okay.
Right. Funny, yeah.
But episodic. How many episodes?
Episodic. And I co-produced the first 3 seasons, I think. You know, and we did that at the same time we were doing Radio Flyer at Columbia, and I was prepping the first Willy, and it was a fabulous time because we were doing too much. You know, and when you're doing too much, it can be so, you know, invigorating, so energetic. I mean, I would sleep at home and come home to dinner. Well, I wouldn't come home to dinner. I'd meet my husband at a restaurant.
Sure. So you were just one thing to the next.
Yeah, it was great.
So I bet you got very good at making decisions, being
I'm
in
good
the
at
moment.
making decisions, and you have to be super, super organized.
Yeah.
You know, so there was at one time there were, you know, glory days, but there was one time at Warner Brothers where we were doing. So I was trying to get Willy 1 off the ground. We were still doing Tales from the Crypt, I think. Yeah, and they were shooting Lethal 4, and I was trying to put together a quasi documentary about America called it was at that time called Timescape. But anyway, and maybe one other thing. Anyway, so I had this little office, and in front of me was this big office because that's where all the assistants were. Mm-hmm. And you would come in and out of my office all the time, but the first thing you had to do when you came into my office was announce what project you were talking about.
Of course.
Hi, I'm Nina. Willy.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Topic.
Hi, I'm Mark. We're talking about Lethal. Okay, got it. Da 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 da. You know, because you know, and you learn to, you know, so you have these little compartments in your brain that would, like, you know, be called upon to, like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's great.
Hard to keep track. How else have you seen the business change since you've been in it?
Well, from a business perspective, a lot. You know, in the 80s and 90s, the studio system was a creative hub. You know, you had relationships on a creative level with the executives, you know, and especially at Warner Brothers, which was known as, it gave you the environment of like a college campus. You know, it was very clubby, familiar, everybody knew everybody, you know, you knew the...
Very collegial.
Yes. And it was very nice because projects were chosen based on relationships and story and... you know, creative decisions. In the 90s, I think, it started to change well, and then by the time, it started to change into more of a corporate environment. Not 90s, I beg your, late 90s. And so people in charge of production, the studio heads, were MBAs. Oh. See, you know, they came up differently. Instead of coming up creatively, they came up through business.
So then it was all about financial modeling rather than story.
Yeah, and as the world and as distribution became more of a global business, you know, the international marketplace used to be sort of the bonus. You would make your movie, it would do well domestically, and then go out foreign.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Now foreign is as big a piece of the pie as anything, and sometimes it's the bigger piece of the pie.
Right, and you sell it before you ever start.
Yeah. So now, and movies cost so much more. And so sorry folks, that's my dog. So the risks, you know, are greater. So to mitigate your risk, you look for partners. And these days the partners are all out, you know, international partners offshore. So the business has changed. The model has changed. You know, it's not somebody saying, "Okay, here's $20 million. Go make your great movie."
Yeah, that budget size is so rare now.
Yeah, no, I mean, if low, what would you say is the average budget these days?
I would say 75 to 150.
Okay, that's a ton of money.
Yeah.
You know, so who makes $20 million movies? Used to give you a feature film, and now it's no man's land.
Yeah.
It's because it's not enough money to make the spectacle, and you know, the marketplace for the $20 million movies is small. It's limited.
Yeah,
you know?
So they're either $3 million or they're micro budget,
right? No,
or they're superhero $200 million.
That's right. I've heard that in today's market, the $3 million threshold is the sweet spot. You know, people see that you can make that is a good business decision.
Oh, hello, Blumhouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. My partner and I are trying to put a $3 million movie together right now. Not quite sure how we're going to do it. We have some of the money, but
it's such a special skill to do the production for that amount of money.
Yeah,
it's a different
and where
way
are
of
you going to do
working.
it? How are you going to do it? How many days can you afford to do it? You know, where, you know, it's challenging because we have a really good script, and if I had that $20 million, this would be a fantastic movie. Easy. But 20 is like a weird number.
Yeah.
You know?
And it felt like 2008 is when it fell apart.
Yes.
From where I was sitting, they stopped.
Well, 208, a lot of things fell apart, including my last company. Because I had a company called Katakawa Pictures USA. And my partner and I founded that company probably about 03, 04. And it was interesting because the company was a brainchild of our Japanese partner, who was the number 2 man in the entertainment division at a big Japanese publishing house.
Oh.
Completely different paradigm,
Yeah.
right? So, so now I'm not, so I left the studio system in 97, because after Free Willy 3, party was over. It was not going to be.
We're out.
We don't care anymore. That's, you know, we're not going to make that movie. So I left the studio system and became an independent producer. So that was in 97. Embarrassingly enough, that's 20 years ago.
We don't need to mention
Holy
that.
mackerel. So, and it was a new day. What an awakening.
Yeah.
I'll just talk a minute about that, because the studio system is where you have everything at your disposal. You know, you pick up a phone, you dial, you punch in some numbers, and things happen.
Yeah, your IT guy shows up.
Your IT guy shows up at great expense, but your IT guy shows up, you know, on some ledger, right? And you don't have to pay for things like Xeroxing a script.
Yeah.
Because we were still Xeroxing scripts. So as an independent producer, you're paying rent, you're paying for your assistant, and you're paying $5 for every Xerox copy, which is like shocking. So for every script that I threw away, I have a whole different respect for that.
Yeah.
That's somebody's $5.
So how are you financing a company like that?
Out of pocket. You start out of pocket until you either get your next gig going, and then you can write these things off to the movie, whatever, or you form a company and have somebody pay your overhead.
Right, get some investors.
Yeah. You know, so in this case, anyway, so in that early independent effort of mine, I formed a company called Capstone Pictures, and we made a family film, a surfing film called Local Boys. And we made that for $2 million.
Wow.
Yeah, surfers on the water, boats, kids. You know,
That's impressive.
Yeah, we did that, and we.
Where did you shoot it?
Zuma Beach, all up and down.
Oh, here.
It was a day in the beach every day.
Yeah.
You know, so it was great. But the company, and those were the days, late '90s, early 2000s, where it was still very popular to have these co-financing arrangements with the Germans. You know, their tax incentives and everything was very attractive in those days. And so we had one of those that fell apart.
Oh.
And it fell apart 4 weeks before we were shooting.
Oh, no.
So we are deeply in prep. We're spending our part of the money,
Yeah,
which
you
my
spent a
partner
lot of money.
Yeah, my partner was able to rally up part of the financing because we were going to co-finance and co-produce this with a German company. And so 4 weeks before shooting,
Yikes.
you know, we're full out prep, right? And then the email you never ever want to get begins with regrettably. Right? Regrettably what? Regrettably we cannot fund at this time. Can you postpone? We said, no, we're not, no.
We're going.
And we're going and we're gonna sue you. So our little $5 million.
It's not going to end well.
No, so our little $5 million budget got cut down to $2 million because that's all the money we had on our side.
So you didn't replace that money, you just cut it down?
Cut it down. So,
What did you give up?
Days of shooting, mostly. You know, we had Mark Harmon. It was great. He grounded the movie as the actor. The rest were a bunch of really good, who are all now working TV actors. But in the day, this was an early movie for them. And they all said they knew how to surf.
Of course
in
they
the audition.
did. Nobody did.
I surfed every day. They would come, oh, yeah, I just came from the beach. Yeah, I start off every day on a board. Really? Okay, great, man. So you know this is good, right? Yeah, no problem.
Could anyone surf?
No. One person, one actor kind of surfed, and one truly had never been on a board.
So then we're like, okay, surf lessons now.
Right? But they got the job, you know, and, you know, I guess you know, if someone comes to you and says, I know how to ride a horse, you're going to say, great, you know. You don't make them show you how they ride a horse.
Yeah, but now I think everybody knows that they're lying.
Right.
So did you have stunt people do the actual surfing, or did you teach them to surf?
We had doubles.
Yeah.
We had doubles.
You'd have to.
You know, because it's like, God, you know, we have no money to teach you how to surf, you know. But anyway,
they were all in a panic. I got to learn to surf.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Shoot, you know. But, it was, but we made the movie. So anytime anyone makes a movie, it's like pat on the back, you know. Cause
it's a miracle.
It's just so hard.
It's incredible.
But we made it. But we made that movie. And anyway, so after we made that movie and we no longer had our partner, our German partner with whom we were going to make a slate of movies, that was gone. So I was looking for the next opportunity when my current partner, Lauren Wiseman, called up and said, let's have lunch. I want to talk to you about something. And that began an exploration into Katakawa Pictures because her good friend of many years was this man, Shinya, who was the number 2 guy in the entertainment division at a giant publisher called Katakawa Publishing in Tokyo. And it was Shinya's long life idea to take the cream of the crop of Japanese books, comics, manga, anime, and bring them here to the States, develop them, reinvent them into American movies.
That was so smart.
Bring them here, make American movies, and send them, and then they would go back to Japan for Japanese distribution. All right?
It's a great idea.
And it was just at that time when The Ring had come out. And The Ring was a book started from out of the Katakawa library. So everybody in Hollywood said, wow, you know, The Ring just made DreamWorks $100 million. What else is over there?
Let's get on that bandwagon.
So Lauren and I began a very tedious, laborious process of cherry picking the best titles out of the Katakawa library.
Wow.
In a language that we didn't speak, read, or write. Right?
How'd you do that?
Translators.
Yes.
Translators and lots of Japanese-American interns who would have to walk us through a film.
I was going to say, did you ask the kids? Because they're all about it.
That's right. But when we got the material, we were making our choices based on little log lines and synopses that were badly written. But that sounds good, and that's got a cool image. You know, so we would bring all this material here. Watched a ton of Japanese movies. Because the library was great. It had everything from samurai movies to rubber monster movies to, you know, manga, swordplay, whatever. So eventually, after all this, we selected about 30 projects, hired copywriters to make good English, you know, one sheet. So we had a graphic artist, and we created a little portfolio. We had CAA as our agents. We had big shot lawyers. So we were like well-grounded.
And these were live action?
Live action. So our job was to sell. So it took 2 years to create that portfolio. And we do this on spec, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, the upside was great because look at all these movies we could produce.
Yeah.
So we took our little portfolio and we went, and CAA got us every meeting in town. And we went and met everybody. And we were setting up projects left and right. And we got a first look deal with Dimension Pictures. And they gobbled up, we want these 4. We said, okay, let's go.
Was this while it was still Disney or after?
After. And so it was Bob Weinstein. And this is his division, Dimension. Anyway, so we got in the business. And the Japanese was paying our overhead.
Great.
So we had offices, grown-up offices. We had underground parking. We had an elevator.
Offices.
I mean, you know, come on. I had a receptionist. It was like, this is our company.
Yeah.
And we probably had, I don't know, 10, 12 people working for us. Because look at, you know, we had. There was volume. There was volume. This wasn't just a one-off. This was a library.
Yeah.
And.
What happened?
Well, we made a movie. We made a movie called One Missed Call, which we co-financed. We did it together with, it was a horror movie it was a remake of a Japanese horror movie. And we teamed up with Alcon Pictures and we co-financed it and Warner Brothers distributed it. And it was okay. wasn't this big blockbuster. There was never going to be a one missed text or one call to, you know.
Yeah.
But we made that movie, and we made a couple of episodes of Masters of Horror. It was in a horror anthology on NBC. Mm-hmm. And 2 of the Masters of Horror were Japanese directors. So we went to Tokyo and got those off the ground. It was great fun. You know, when you're in business with a Japanese company, you get to go to Tokyo.
Yeah, fun.
Great. Really great. The food, the experience, I guess all the courtesies that are afforded you when you make that trip. It was great. So, God, I guess, anyway, so we were working our way to '08, and so when Lehman Brothers crashed, the Japanese essentially say, you know, what are we doing with a big company in Hollywood? So it took about another year for that to wind down. Mm-hmm. And as it was winding down, the handwriting was on the wall.
Yes,
you know?
A casualty of the Great Recession.
Right? Yeah. And so, you know, but here we are. So it's been, so I guess, so after that, well, the good news about that is that Lauren and I retained our relationships and a lot of the IPs.
Oh, great.
So today we still have probably 5 things in a variety, various phases of development. You know, one we hope to get off the ground next year. We'll see. One is being written. One has to be pitched. You know, all different stuff.
Yeah. But
at a certain point, I wanted to do something else besides wait. Right?
Really?
Because you're waiting for the writer, you're waiting for the script, you're waiting for the money, you're waiting.
And you're a doer.
Waiting, yeah. I had to do something, so I started knitting. That was short-lived.
that was your...
Well, I had to do something, and I thought, I'll just wait for the script. So I started knitting, but I really didn't knit. It was just like I knew how to put 2 sticks together and move the yarn. Uh-huh. So that year, everybody I knew got a scarf. Because all I could do was knit in a straight line, right? Couldn't, you know. So I just knit. So everyone got a scarf, and then when that was over, when I had no more scarves to knit,
like, we got to get Jennie a movie.
I said, I gotta do something, and then I got the teaching bug. So
and then that launched that.
And that launched that, and to my great surprise, it's become like a second profession. I really like it. You know,
yeah, I can tell by the way you talk about it.
Yeah, I really like it, and but it's an opportunity to give back. Mm-hmm. You know, because I've been doing this now for over 30 years, so there's a lot. As you can tell by this conversation, there's many different levels to it. Yeah. You know, so you can be this kid working, for a big producer at the beach, to being a studio producer, to being, the indie producer looking for money.
We have all the experience.
Yeah,
in all the different aspects.
I've been fortunate in that way. Yeah.
Do you think of yourself as a success?
No, I don't see myself personally as a. No, I don't. I am happy. If I were to drop dead tomorrow, I would be. It'd be fine knowing that I had made Free Willy.
Oh, that was the one.
That was the one. That experience was the most fulfilling of the whole thing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and so knowing that I did that I'm cool.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's good. You know, I feel good. I did that movie, and it's good.
You're satisfied.
Yep.
Are you a badass?
No.
What does that word mean to you?
What, a badass?
Uh-huh.
Being super aggressive, being, going after something regardless, of the consequences for anybody. Mm-hmm. Just, not putting people first. I mean, that to me, it means badass, To me, I put people first. I try to be really upfront. I like to tell the truth. I'm a bad liar. I really am a bad liar. And I try to, and I admire people who have skills of how to, work their way through the system. Mm-hmm. I just don't have those skills. I have tried to be smart and clever like that, and I don't sleep well. I don't sleep well because I said, what did I say? Oh, what did I tell that person?
It's hard to lie. You got to keep track.
It's hard to lie. Some people are probably really good at it in this business. I just find I'm more direct and to the point, and I don't like to lie because then I have to keep track of it.
Exactly. It's harder.
It's hard. I like to have a good night's sleep, you know.
Is there anything you haven't accomplished that you want to?
Yeah, my next movie. I want to keep making movies, you know.
Is it one in particular, or is that one of the properties you have?
It's one. It's the one that we have. Well, the script arrived this morning. Can't wait to read it. I know.
Oh.
I know. So we'll see. But that would be great to make. You know, there's always, you just say one more movie, and you never stop saying that. And then one day you're just, you know, you're making it.
That's great.
Yeah. So I have actually, I'm quite content. I have very few regrets. There are some things I would have done differently. But I don't think there's anything that I wouldn't have done, or, you know, I mean, to regret, you know, regret's a terrible thing to have hanging on your head.
How long have you been married?
God, since, say, Jim and I lived together for 9 years, and then we decided, okay, well,
might as well.
We've got the house, the dog, let's get married. So, got married in 87, almost 30 years.
Oh my gosh. In Hollywood, that's 105 years.
Yeah. Well, you know, it works because, on many levels, but my husband's a writer.
Perfect.
And so he totally understands my business. And
does he write films?
He's written a number of scripts that he's optioned, but most recently he just finished writing a book.
Fantastic.
And it's going to be published next year. So, and writers are very self-contained. You know, they live in their heads. And so, you know, it's like, I'll be gone, you know, are you home already? Yes. Did you know I was gone? No, whatever, you know. And so, and he totally respects what I do.
Yeah.
Which is great, because if I say, you know, I'm going to go away for 4 months and make a movie, or I won't be home until 10 tonight, or whatever, it's just part of the business. And he does, he's very supportive. So when I used to leave the house every morning and go to work, goodbye, see you later, don't forget, you're the boss.
I love it. I love it.
And I'd wave goodbye and get in the car, but Eric, don't forget you're the boss, you know. And I think that's really sweet, you know, because it was like, yeah, you can do it, you know, go do it.
Oh, you picked the right partner.
Yeah. So, and hence 30 years, you know.
Yeah.
But 30 years of marriage on top of, wow, that's almost a 40-year relationship.
It's incredible. It's
more than half my lifetime.
Did you have children?
No, Jim came with 2 kids.
Oh, perfect.
So, you know, and they're wonderful. So we're all very close friends. So it's great. I got an instant family.
That's great. You're the best of everything.
Yeah, and it allowed me to keep on working, because
right.
I don't know how the working moms do it.
It's hard.
You know, I don't know. I've been very fortunate in being able to stay singularly focused, you know, on the work. Work. And I didn't have to pick up kids. I didn't have to worry about runny noses, schools, this, that, you know, weekends. I didn't. It was always about the work.
You could sleep when you needed to sleep.
I could sleep. Right? And I think that's a part of why I'm still here. Because, you know, I had a singular focus. You know, I wasn't distracted by other things. Yeah. Like family and children, you know.
So distracting. What advice would you give to people just coming up now?
It's tough. I still think, I'm still of the mind that you need to be creative if you're going to be a creative producer, which is what I can speak to the most, is finding a story, a script that you really care about. Because that's going to keep you at it. You know, if you don't care about it, no one else is going to care about it.
You have to have the passion.
You have to. And
do
if
this
you give
work.
up, then it's over.
Yeah.
Because no one else is going to pick it up and fight your battles for you. You know, so you have to really care about what you're doing, and that's not a judgment on what you choose. You know, you can choose a slasher movie if you want, but if that's what you want to do because you know how to do that and make that something that you're going to be, I mean, you don't have to be proud of it. I mean, you know, you want to do it. It's either something, and there's a variety of reasons. You can make this as an entree into the business. You can make this because you think it's going to make money. You can do this because it's going to impress your mother, whatever. You can, you have to, for whatever your reason, you have to stick with it. So tenacity is probably a big part of what because if you don't have the tenacity to hang in the business, you're not going to be satisfied. You're going to go look for something else.
Oh, it will chew you up.
Yeah, it will. It's super tough. And for a woman to do this, since your audience is probably listening to this who are female, super tough. More opportunities now, I think, than ever before. Every conversation has the word diversity in it.
It does.
Almost too much, because it's distracting. Let's just do it. Let's just stop talking about it, But the diversity part, I think, is good. It creates more opportunities. More people are aware of the lack of diversity.
Well, it's so transparent right now, and everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's good, and I think there's a lot more opportunities with the Netflix and Amazons and all this. A lot more places for women to rise to work. I still think there's a big imbalance of power in this town. There are the women who, are in, the big positions of power, presidents of production or heads of studios, but overall, it's very off balance. Yeah. Very off balance. But for the rest of us, the people who do the work, not the presidents of the world, I think there's a lot more opportunities than there used to be. Yeah, the students that I have at the college level, it's interesting because it's a film school. It's a 4-year liberal arts college that with an emphasis in film and television.
Wait, which one?
It's called Columbia College Hollywood, and the students there's probably I guess 50% women, 50% men, at the school, and it's great to see the girl students into camera, into editing, into production design, into all those areas that were so male dominated. But they're of an age. Let's say the average age is 20. They're not thinking about how it's different. I'm going to pick up a camera. I'm going to be a camera person. This is where I want to be.
I hope they don't get shocked when then they try to go into the field.
Don't know.
And find it harder.
Don't know. Hopefully that field will be open to them. Don't know. I remember the first time I saw a woman camera loader. It's like, whoa.
Hey now.
Hey, you can pick that up. That's fantastic. Go. But it stood out.
Yeah.
It stood out. So it's different. Hopefully we'll get to a place where there are really no boundaries. I still think there are. People don't talk about them. They're the invisible lines you have to cross, into the boys' club.
Yeah.
But on the creative side, though, there's no boundaries, I think. If a good idea is a good idea. How you're thought of in the business is so much of, I say it's, people always say, Willy, it's who you know. Well, it's who you know and what they think of you. So I might know you, but if I don't think well of you, then I'm going to have we're going to have a slightly different reaction.
Right.
That if I know you and think you're fantastic, come on in.
That's an important distinction.
Yes, it is. It's who you know.
Who
yeah,
you
but
know
what
and
do
what
they think of you?
Yes, that is important.
So, yeah, but I just hope the women don't stop trying to get in there because you can. Yeah. And I think once you're in and you do a good job, it's just like it's not even a gender thing. If there's an opportunity and the door opens for you and you walk through that door, then you have to perform.
Take it.
Yeah. Take it, grab it, and do it, and do it well. If you don't do it well, you're out.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever feel like an imposter?
No. An imposter?
Yeah.
What's an imposter? Imposter in the business? Like I wasn't, like I was, what, playing producer? What do you mean?
what am I doing here? I don't belong here. What?
No. No,
I'm taking a survey.
Yeah, no, I fell into this quite comfortably, you know, not without stress.
It's
you know,
stressful
there was
business.
something there would, early on, my friends would tease me because on every movie I would have one physical ailment. It never reoccurred, but in that movie, I can tell you that on a certain movie, I lost the sight in one eye.
What?
Yep. And the Jules Stein Clinic said, well, it's there's a big fancy word for it, but it's where fluid fills up the lower part of your eye. So if I'm looking at your face, I cannot see your mouth. I can just see your eyebrows because I lost the lower half of the vision in one eye.
How odd. It's like
and
hysterical blindness.
They said it's stress related. It'll go away. Sure enough, it did when the movie was over. And on another movie, I had a bald spot the size of a quarter on the top of my head. I know. And I went to the dermatologist and I said, why do I have this bald spot on top of me? And there was a long fancy word for it. And he came at me and gave me some injections into my head. That's scary, by the way, when the doctor comes at your head with a needle. Anyway, and the hair grew back. But it was stress related from that movie. So I would get these weird, you know, sort of exotic little ailments, all stress related.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. And because I didn't want to have my stress be seen. I didn't want it to be exterior.
So you tucked it away in some little compartment that came out in some
my
odd
stress
place.
was interior, right? Internalized stress that would have to pop out somewhere.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. But I realized that I must be getting better at it because I don't have, knock on wood, I haven't had a weird thing happen, like my teeth fell out or something. I haven't had any signs of that lately.
You've been able to incorporate it.
I guess, yeah. You know, but yeah, it was kind of funny. I think, oh God, what's going to happen to me on this movie? Because I would internalize my stress, you know, because I didn't want to show.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. Oh, the girl can't take it.
Never let them see you sweat.
Right, the girl can't take it. Look at her, you know. So I can do this, no problem.
That would be a great book. Like every chapter is whatever weird ailment you got on.
Yeah, that's right. How I got through this, yeah. You know, and I think I have a bunch of titles for books I'm never going to write. One is Take the High Road, The View is Better.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not, you know,
It's also very timely.
Yeah. Yes, right.
We'll let Michelle Obama write that book.
Yeah, she could. She could. There's another book I said, I didn't get there on my knees. But then I thought, that could be blue. I'm not going to go there.
That's a good one, though.
Yeah, a bunch of that. Or I think if I was going to write a book, it would be called My Life on Spec.
Oh, that's good too.
That's good, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is pretty much what it is.
That's what it is.
My life on spec. It's like no one's paying me to sit here every single. And I would have to say that for certain, me being super disciplined keeps me going. Mm-hmm. Because even though I have this nice home office behind my house, my commute is now 30 seconds.
Just walking
from
across
the kitchen to the back house, right? I am still in here at 9:30 every morning, and I don't leave here until 7 at night. So I've maintained my work hours here.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm sitting here in my own office. I have a view of the yard. I've got my dog over here, and I'm in control of my space. And there's very little else you can really be in control of in life, you know. But this is my space, and I'm gonna do my thing.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jennie Lou Tugend for sharing her story, and special thanks to Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Other50%. On Instagram at Other50% podcast. And don't forget to check out The Other 50%, A Herstory of Tech, and subscribe there. Thanks for listening. See you next time.